It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. In the heart of downtown Los Angeles, tucked between marble office towers and glass window boutiques, sat a modest little restaurant. Not the kind with velvet ropes or Instagram influencers. No, this was a place for regulars. Businessmen in tailored suits. Women in expensive athleisure. Locals who could afford to forget they were rich. At 3:12 p.m. on a Wednesday, the hostess at Vida Nera, a sharp-faced woman named Carly, stood behind her podium, tapping the reservation screen with one long acrylic nail. She didn't notice the man walking in at first. No one did. He wore a plain black cap, pulled low, aviator sunglasses, and a bomber jacket that had seen better days. His jeans weren't designer. His shoes weren't polished. He didn't walk in like he owned the place. He walked in like he'd been on his feet since morning. Just another tired guy looking for a bite. Except he wasn't. "Excuse me," he said, his voice even, calm, familiar in a strange way. "Would it be all right to grab a table for one?" Carly looked up, blinked, then smiled a little too tight. "I'm sorry, sir. We're booked for the next hour and a half." He nodded slowly. "I can wait." She cleared her throat. "Unfortunately, we only serve reservations until after 5. Behind him, a couple in tennis whites walked in. Carly's face lit up. "Mr. and Mrs. Kessler. Right on time." The man in the cap stepped aside, watching as the smiling couple were led past rows of half-empty tables. Something in his jaw twitched. A waiter walked by, paused mid-step, and looked twice at the man in the cap. Recognition flickered in his eyes, but he kept walking. Tom Cruise didn't say a word. 20 minutes earlier, he'd been at a nearby children's hospital. No cameras, no press, just Tom, in a small room painted like a jungle, holding a plastic toy giraffe and trying to make a 6-year-old boy laugh. And he did laugh, his first smile since diagnosis. Moments like that were the reason Tom stayed grounded in a world that never stopped spinning. That, and his rituals. One of them, after every hospital visit, he went somewhere quiet to eat alone. No assistants, no handlers, just him, a meal, and a moment to breathe. Vida Nera had come highly recommended. Rustic Italian, low-key, hidden in plain sight. And now, close to him. He didn't cause a scene. He didn't pull out his phone or reveal his identity. Instead, he stepped outside and stood by a parking meter, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, watching patrons filter in and out. Inside the restaurant, a soft murmur started to rise. That guy he looked like. No way. Why would Tom Cruise be here? Are you sure? His jawline. Dude, that's Tom Cruise. Carly began to sweat. Her phone buzzed on the podium. A text from her manager upstairs. Did you just turn away Tom Cruise? Her throat went dry. Outside, Tom glanced at his watch. He wasn't angry. He'd seen worse. But a small part of him, the human part, the boy from Syracuse who used to wash dishes at age 12, felt the sting. It wasn't just being denied a table. It was being invisible, forgotten, judged. He exhaled slowly, then walked down the block. Across the street, a homeless man sat cross-legged on the pavement. A cardboard sign read, "I used to have a name." Tom crouched beside him. "How's your day going?" The man looked up, startled. His face was sunburnt, creased with years of stories no one had asked about. Not great. I'm hungry." Tom smiled. "You like Italian food?" The man laughed, dry and bitter. "Haven't had that since I still had a roof." Tom stood. "Wait here." He walked into the cafe next to Vida Nera, ordered 2 plates of penne arrabbiata, extra bread, and a bottle of sparkling water. The owner, an older man with kind eyes, refused his card. "No charge, Mr. Cruise." "I saw what happened." Tom nodded once. "Thank you, but I'd rather pay." He insisted. Paid double. Minutes later, he was back on the sidewalk, kneeling beside the man. He opened the box, handed over the steaming food, and sat beside him. Just 2 men eating pasta on a curb in downtown LA. That's when the phones came out. The photo would go viral by morning. Tom Cruise, cross-legged beside a homeless man, eating takeout while a luxury restaurant glimmered behind him. Doors still shut to the one man who could have filled the place with cameras, fans, and a line around the block. But Tom didn't care about the photo. He didn't even know it was taken. He was too busy asking the man his name. "Jason," the man said. but most people just call me Hey. Nice to meet you, Jason, Tom said, offering his hand. I'm Tom. Jason smiled, the way people do when they realize someone actually sees them. Word traveled fast. By the time Tom Cruise finished his meal on the sidewalk, a quiet ripple of recognition had begun to spread. Not from a press release, not from a PR stunt, but from a single photograph posted by a college student walking by. Tom Cruise got denied service at this snobby restaurant, so he sat with a homeless guy and shared lunch instead. Unreal. Respect. 1 hour later, it had over 30,000 retweets. But Tom didn't know that yet, and he wouldn't have cared. He and Jason were mid-conversation, leaning back against a brick wall as if the whole world had faded away. Jason's voice shook as he told the story of how he'd once worked as a mechanic, how a single injury and a bad insurance claim spiraled into years of sleeping in his car, then no car at all. And now I'm just here, Jason finished. But hey, this is the best meal I've had in a year. And I got to eat it with you, of all people. So, maybe today wasn't so bad. Tom nodded slowly. You ever think about working again? Jason laughed bitterly. Sure. Every day? But nobody hires guys like me. No address, no resume, no clean shoes. Tom stared down at Jason's worn boots, then looked up, thoughtful. His expression was quiet, but something was turning behind his eyes. A flicker, an idea. That's when a young man in a vest came rushing out of Vita Nera. Carly, the hostess, had finally panicked. Her manager had seen the photo. The owner was screaming on the phone from his yacht in Santa Barbara. And now they were trying to clean up the mess the only way they knew how. Mr. Cruise? The man asked, breathless. Apologies for earlier. We had no idea it was you. We'd be honored to serve you now. In fact, your table is ready. Best seat in the house. Tom looked at him, sunglasses still on. His tone didn't change. I already ate. Well, perhaps dessert? Or wine on the terrace? On the house, of course. Tom's head tilted. Can my friend join me? The waiter blinked at Jason. Stammered. The dress code, you understand. Tom stood. Full height now. Calm. Powerful. That's what I thought. He gave Jason a pat on the back, turned his attention to the restaurant's glass facade, and did something no one expected. He walked away. Meanwhile, across town, the story was catching fire. Talk shows started picking it up. Twitter threads exploded. Celebrities weighed in. Tom Cruise out here showing what Real class looks like. Clapping hands. Viola Davis. I've worked with this man. Not surprised, but still blown away. Christopher McQuarrie. Back at Vita Nera, Carly was crying in the break room. The manager was on the phone with damage control, and the chef was pacing back and forth, screaming, We turned away Tom Cruise. Do you realize what that means? But the truth was, it meant more than they thought. Because Tom Cruise wasn't done yet. He and Jason walked 2 blocks to his parked SUV, an unassuming black Tesla, scuffed with dust from a recent road trip. Tom unlocked the door and paused. You mind riding with me for a bit? Jason blinked. What? Seriously? You said no one gives you a shot anymore, Tom replied. Well, maybe I do. Jason stared at him. What does that even mean? Tom smiled. Let's find out. They drove in silence for a few minutes, winding through Sunset Boulevard traffic. Jason kept fidgeting, like a man waiting to wake up from a dream. Where are we going? He finally asked. Tom didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he pulled into a gated parking lot, nodded to a security guard, and drove through a large black gate. The sign above the building read, Cruise Concepts. Jason's jaw dropped. What is this place? My private set design compound, Tom said. We use it for stunt testing, gear prep, a little bit of everything. He parked, hopped out, and walked around to the passenger side. Jason didn't move. You coming? Tom asked, grinning. I'm not dressed for this, Jason muttered, suddenly small. You're dressed in honesty. That's more than most people I see in here. Inside the building, everything felt like another universe. Giant rigs, cameras, fabrication tools, black and white photos of famous stunts on the walls, and a handful of young interns, now frozen mid-task at the sight of Tom Cruise walking in with a homeless man. Tom waved them off. Give us some space, folks. He led Jason to a tool bench, picked up a small device, and turned to him. You said you were a mechanic, right? Jason nodded. This is a brake housing prototype for a stunt rig we're building. We've got a calibration problem we can't figure out. He slid it across the bench. Take a look. Jason hesitated. Then his hands moved. At first they trembled, then steadied, then worked like they remembered what it meant to matter. Tom stood back and watched, saying nothing. 5 minutes later, Jason looked up. Your housing geometry's fine, but the compression cap is mounted backward. It's putting torque in reverse under heat. Tom grinned. I told them that yesterday. Jason blinked. Wait, was this a test? Tom leaned in. No, it was a chance. Jason stood still, the housing part still in his hand, caught between disbelief and something harder to describe, something that had been buried under years of rejection. Tom leaned casually against the bench, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You were right, Tom said quietly. You know your craft. Jason opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. His throat tightened. It had been years since someone said that to him. Really said it. Not out of pity or shallow encouragement, but with truth. His hands had forgotten the feeling of being useful. I didn't even know if I still had it, Jason finally whispered. I thought it was gone. Tom raised an eyebrow. Let me tell you something, Jason. Skill doesn't just disappear. It waits. For the moment when someone gives a damn again. Jason blinked, staring at the housing in his calloused fingers. Then looked up. Why me? Because someone has to start caring again, Tom said. And I've got the time, the means, and apparently, a very good sense of who's being ignored. He clapped Jason on the back. You want a job? Jason nearly fell backward. I what? I'm not offering charity, Tom said, voice sharpening. You just fixed something my engineers couldn't. I'm offering a trial, 2 weeks. Paid. Shadow my rig team. If it clicks, it clicks. If not, you leave with a paycheck and a reference from Tom Cruise. Jason was shaking now. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Tom replied, already walking toward the hallway. And for God's sake, take a shower first. You smell like you slept under the freeway. Jason laughed, actually laughed, and followed. By that evening, the photo of Tom and Jason had gone fully viral. News stations were covering it. YouTubers were analyzing it. People were debating whether it was real, staged, or the beginning of something deeper. And it was. Because within 24 hours, Vita Nera issued a formal apology on their website, in which they called the incident a grave misjudgment. They offered Tom a private dinner and platinum lifetime access. Tom declined. He posted just one message in return. The measure of a person isn't how they treat the rich. It's how they treat the invisible. Millions shared it. Within hours, the restaurant's Yelp rating tanked. But something else happened, too. People started asking questions, not about Tom, but about Jason. Who's the man sitting with Cruise? What's his story? Why did this moment hit so hard? And that's when Tom's team did something unexpected. They uploaded a short, no-frills video on his personal site. Just Tom, sitting in front of a table, telling the story. I met Jason after being denied a table. He was sitting on the curb, hungry. We shared lunch. But what I didn't expect was what happened next. He fixed a problem we couldn't solve in my production compound. In under 5 minutes. Tom held up the housing part. This is what the world throws away without looking. This is what's hidden in plain sight. This is why I hired Jason. The video ended with one sentence on a black screen. We don't rescue people. We remind them who they are. Meanwhile, back at the compound, Jason was living through a quiet storm of change. Tom had given him a cot in a private crew trailer. Clean clothes. Shave kit. No cameras. No drama. Just space. The crew had been skeptical at first. One of the stunt engineers, a guy named Lex, even grumbled, "We bringing in strays now." But that changed quickly, because on day 2, Jason reworked a pressure seal that had been leaking for weeks. On day 3, he spotted a safety hazard no one had noticed. On day 4, Lex walked up, offered him a Red Bull, and said, "You're not bad, man. Not bad at all." Jason just smiled. He didn't need applause. He needed purpose. And for the first time in years, it was back. Late that night, Tom sat alone in his screening room, watching an old clip of his Rain Man performance. His phone buzzed. A message from someone he hadn't heard from in 10 years. I saw what you did. That was my brother once. No one saw him. I never forgot that. Thank you. Tom stared at the screen for a while. He didn't reply. Instead, he whispered to himself, maybe this is what matters now. Then he stood, walked to the window, and watched the city lights flicker like stars. Tomorrow, the world would be talking again. But tonight, one man who had been invisible had been seen. By the end of Jason's first week, the energy on set had shifted. What started as a viral scandal had evolved into something stranger, a quiet respect growing around a man who just days ago was sleeping near a dumpster. Jason wasn't loud. He didn't seek attention. But every time a wire harness failed or a hydraulic jammed, he'd step in. No fuss, no ego, and make it work. And the crew noticed. Tom noticed more. One morning, Tom found Jason sitting alone in the break area, sketching something on a napkin. What's that? Jason didn't look up. Rig redesign. This armature's too heavy for the stunt weight. You're putting too much torque on the left shoulder. Tom took the napkin, looked it over. This would save 6 hours a week. Jason finally looked up. And 2 injuries a year. Tom stared at him, silent. Where did you learn this stuff? He asked. Jason shrugged. Nowhere fancy. My dad was a mechanical welder. I used to help him in the garage. Then 15 years of set work. I see things. Tom folded the napkin, slid it into his back pocket, and nodded. I want you on payroll. Jason blinked. What? No more trial. You're on my team now. Jason hesitated, eyes narrowing. I don't need a pity gig, man. This isn't pity, Tom said, voice sharp. This is a damn upgrade to my crew. I'm not handing you a favor. I'm hiring a brain. Jason finally nodded. And for the first time since Tom had met him, he smiled without fear in his eyes. That same afternoon, Tom received a call from his agent. You're not gonna believe this, the voice said. Studio heads saw the story. They're flipping out, in a good way. Tom raised an eyebrow. Because I hired a guy who eats off sidewalks? Because you looked real. Human. You weren't a star. You were a man with principles. They want you on Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert. Everyone's asking. Tom walked to the window. He hated this part, the machine of attention. He didn't help Jason for a headline. Still, he knew this moment mattered. What if we said no? Tom asked. You'd miss the chance to say something that sticks. Tom tapped the window with his knuckles. Set up Fallon. But I want full control over the segment. There was a pause. You planning to bring Jason? Tom smiled. I'm planning to bring the truth. 3 days later, Jason stood backstage at The Tonight Show, staring at his reflection in a green room mirror. He wore a dark gray button-up, fresh jeans, and the same boots he'd been wearing since the day Tom found him. Tom had offered a new wardrobe. Jason refused. I don't want to pretend I'm someone I'm not, he'd said. They need to see what survival looks like. Tom respected that. Out on stage, Jimmy Fallon laughed with the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we've all heard the viral story. Tom Cruise, denied a table, meets a homeless man, and the world goes nuts. Well, we've got both of them here tonight. Applause erupted. Tom stepped out first, cool as ever. But when Jason followed, slightly hunched, eyes unsure, the entire room stood. A standing ovation. Jason didn't know how to respond. He wasn't built for applause. But Tom reached out, placed a steady hand on his back, and the moment became something sacred. They sat. Fallon leaned in. Tom, let me start with you. What made you stop that day? Why not just walk past? Tom looked at Jason. Because he looked like a man who hadn't been seen in a long time. And I know what that feels like. The room fell silent. Fallon turned to Jason. And you? What did you think when you saw Tom Cruise sitting next to you? Jason chuckled. I thought someone lost a bet. Laughter broke the tension. But then, he added, I realized something. Sometimes it only takes one person to flip the script. One person to remind you, you're not broken. You're just waiting to be asked the right question. After the show, Twitter exploded. Hashtag Cruise and Jason. Hashtag flip the script. Hashtag visible again. News outlets flooded with headlines. Tom Cruise rescues homeless man? No, he recruits him. But the biggest moment came when Tom posted a 15-second clip from the show. Jason's voice, clear. Sometimes you don't need a handout. You just need a door to be left unlocked. Within 48 hours, nonprofits reported a spike in donations. Engineering schools began talking about outreach programs. And a small startup in Atlanta announced something radical. We're hiring 5 skilled tradesmen from the street. Resumes not required. Results are, Jason's story wasn't just spreading. It was changing things. Back at the compound, Tom found Jason back at the bench the next day, already tinkering. You know, Tom said, I got offers for you now. People want you to speak. Right. Even teach. Jason looked up from the rig he was welding. I'm not done building, he said. Tom smiled. Good. Because I'm just getting started. The rain came heavy that night. Not Hollywood rain. The kind that gets sprayed out of rigs, all misty and glamorous. This was raw, angry, gutter-clogging rain, the kind that didn't ask for permission. Jason stood beneath the edge of the studio awning, arms crossed, watching it bounce off the asphalt like it had something to prove. Tom had left early. Meetings. 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 Jason stayed behind. He always stayed behind. He was wiring a hydraulic platform for the next stunt setup. Nothing fancy, but precise. And he liked that. Precision gave him peace. That's when he heard it. Footsteps. Wet. Heavy. Not rushing, but not casual either. He turned. A woman. Soaked. Wearing a coat that had lost the battle against the downpour. Her face, half shadowed by the hood, held a familiarity he couldn't place. Jason. His body froze. He hadn't heard that voice in 12 years. Emily, he said, almost in disbelief. She nodded. The rain didn't matter anymore. The cold didn't matter. All the years of pretending she was just another part of his old life, buried and boxed, collapsed in a single heartbeat. He hadn't seen his sister since the day he walked away from everything. They sat in the crew break room. Jason gave her his sweatshirt, made her tea. He didn't ask why she was there. Not yet. He just watched her. Same jawline. Same nervous way of spinning a spoon in the cup. But older. Tired. You're on TV, she said softly. They all saw you. He looked away. I didn't ask for that. I know. A pause. Why didn't you come home? She asked. Jason clenched his hands together. Home died when Mom did. Emily winced. She waited for you, Jay. Even when she couldn't remember much, she waited. He closed his eyes. I couldn't look her in the face after the way I left, he said. I was drunk half the time, angry the other half. I didn't deserve her forgiveness. Emily leaned forward. Then why are you here now? Why is Tom Cruise bringing you on national TV? Why do you suddenly have the eyes of the world? Jason looked up, and for the first time, he said it out loud. Because someone saw value in me when I didn't. And because this time, I didn't run from it. Emily sat back. Her eyes glistened. He changed everything for you. Jason shook his head. No. He reminded me I still could. Back at his mansion that night, Tom sat by the fire, reading a report on upcoming film locations, when his assistant buzzed in. Tom, you're going to want to see this. An email, forwarded from a producer. It was a social media thread. A popular journalist had posted. Is Jason Heller really who he says he is? Sources say he walked out on his dying mother, abandoned his sister, and used to run scams. This hero's story might have a darker past. Tom closed the laptop. He wasn't shocked. Fame was fire. It warmed you, and it burned you. But the question wasn't if the world would test Jason. It was how Jason would respond when they did. He picked up his phone. Jason answered on the second ring. Yeah. She's safe. Tom asked. There was a pause. Emily's sleeping on the couch, Jason said. We talked. Tom exhaled. Good. Because you're about to wake up in the middle of a storm. The next morning, TMZ ran with it. Tom Cruise's homeless hero has a criminal past. Then Variety. Then YouTube channels. Speculation. Clicks. Narratives. By noon, every major outlet wanted a statement from Tom. His publicist begged him to distance the brand. You can't attach your name to someone whose story's now being questioned. We'll say you were misled. No. Tom, this could tank the film. Tom stood. It'll save the man. The room went silent. Book me a press conference, he said. And tell them Jason's going to speak too. The lights were brutal. Rows of journalists sat with lenses sharp and questions sharper. The cameras rolled. The countdown ran silently on the back wall. Jason stood behind the podium, the same one where movie stars had promoted billion-dollar films. Only this wasn't a movie. This was a reckoning. He wore a plain black t-shirt. No brand. No polish. Just truth. Tom stood to the side, arms crossed, jaw set like granite. He hadn't said a word since they stepped onto the stage. Not a word needed. Jason adjusted the mic. "I know what you're here for," he began. "Not the stunt reel. Not the comeback story. You're here for blood. For the messy part. For the truth no one wanted to ask until it was convenient." Click. Click. The shutters never stopped. "I walked out on my mother 12 years ago," he said, his voice steady. "She was sick. She was dying. And I didn't stay. Because I couldn't face watching her become someone I didn't recognize." He didn't flinch. "I was selfish. I was drunk. I stole money from my sister. I hurt the only two people who ever stood by me." The reporters looked at each other. No one had expected him to start there. "I lived in a van for 5 years. I scammed people for gas money. I got arrested twice, once for fighting, once for shoplifting a sandwich. Both charges were dropped. But I did it. No blinking. But none of that is what makes me a liar." Silence. "What makes me a liar is pretending I wasn't scared." He turned slightly toward Tom. "I met someone who saw past what the world saw. Who looked at a washed-up shell of a man and didn't see a liability. He saw a ledger. A man still in the red, but not beyond saving." He turned back to the cameras. "You want a villain? You've got one. But if you want a real story, here it is." He paused. "I made peace with my sister last night. I told her I'm sorry. She told me I wasn't the only one who gave up after Mom died." His voice cracked, just slightly. People don't need perfect heroes. They need proof that the fall doesn't have to be the end. He stepped back. Tom took the podium. And for a moment, even Hollywood held its breath. Jason Heller is not a brand. He's not a PR stunt. He's not a role model. Tom's voice was low, controlled, dangerous. He's what happens when a broken man decides to build again. He looked directly into the cameras now. "You want to cancel him? Cancel me first." The air shifted. "I've done my own share of things I'm not proud of. But when I meet someone who crawled through their own hell and still wants to help others out of theirs, how dare I turn away?" The crowd was silent. Jason's not the story. He's the start of it. The live stream exploded. Twitter caught fire. Hashtag Jason didn't lie. Hashtag Tom stands tall. Hashtag redemption is real. People weren't just watching. They were choosing sides. But something strange happened. The hate didn't win this time. The rawness did. The honesty did. And deep down, everyone who'd ever made a mistake wanted to believe in someone who crawled back from it. Later that night, Tom and Jason sat on the balcony of the mansion. No cameras. Just two men. Stars overhead. "You realize you just gave every studio exec a heart attack," Jason said, sipping ginger ale. Tom smiled. "Let them sweat." A pause. "What now?" Jason asked. Tom leaned back. "Now we finished the job." Jason looked over. "What job?" Tom turned his head slowly, eyes locked. "The one where we make your story mean something for others." And just like that, a broken man's truth had become a new mission. The table was longer than a limousine. 12 chairs, all filled with names that could buy countries, not just companies. CEOs, hedge fund giants, studio tycoons. The kind of men who made their assistants cry before breakfast. Tom Cruise walked in with Jason beside him. No introduction, just presence. Jason wore a borrowed blazer. Still stiff in the shoulders, not his size, but he didn't fidget. He'd come too far for that. Tom spoke first. "Gentlemen," he nodded. "And Ellen," he added, glancing at the lone woman among the titans. She smirked, wine already in hand. They sat. Servers flowed. Wagyu, lobster, dishes designed to impress, not nourish. Tom didn't touch his plate. Neither did Jason. The conversation turned quickly, predictably, to risk, profit, disruption. Then came Walter Baines, owner of 4 telecom empires. Net worth, $9.2 billion. And an ego that could swallow a planet. "So," Walter said, swirling a $3,000 glass of wine, "you're the fallen angel I've been hearing about." Jason stayed quiet. Walter smirked. "Ex-stuntman, ex-son, ex-human being, from what the tabloids say." A few chuckles around the table. Jason didn't blink. Tom leaned forward. You have a point, Walter? Walter grinned. Just curious what the business model is here. Rehab the washed-up guy, parade him on podcasts, sell inspiration like supplements. Jason finally spoke. You know what I think, Mr. Baines? His voice was calm. Too calm. I think you've spent so long buying your way out of being judged that you forgot what it's like to be worth forgiving. The table went still. Jason leaned in. You think I'm a PR stunt? You should pray your sins never see daylight. Because mine already did. And I survived them. Walter's jaw twitched. Jason kept going. You look at people like me and see failure. I look at people like you and see fear. You're terrified someone might actually see you for what you are when the lights are off. A pause. You hide behind money. I had nothing left to hide behind. That's why I'll win. Because I already lost. Nobody laughed now. Tom raised his glass. To the men who've already been burned and still walk back into the fire. A beat. Ellen raised hers too. Then, slowly, so did everyone else. Except Walter. He was already on his phone, calling someone. Probably to make sure his past hadn't leaked yet. That night, the headlines didn't mention the lobster or the billions. They mentioned Jason. Stuntman turned redemption icon humiliates billionaire at private dinner. Tom Cruise's protege delivers savage reality check to Hollywood elite. I already lost. The 7 words that silenced a billionaire room. On the ride back, Jason looked at Tom. You planned that, didn't you? Tom smirked. I knew he'd poke the bear. I just didn't know the bear would bite that hard. Jason leaned back, finally exhaling. Felt good. Tom nodded. Now you understand something most actors never learn. What's that? That silence is more powerful than applause. By morning, the phone wouldn't stop. Tom's assistant forwarded everything. Podcast requests, feature profiles, interviews with Vanity Fair, Forbes, even a documentary pitch from Netflix. But the biggest shock came in the form of a direct message. No manager. No PR gatekeepers. Just a blunt email from the CEO of Viridian Rise, the most controversial tech startup in America. Jason, saw the dinner. You've got teeth. Real ones. We're launching our new empathy engine at the Genesis Tech Summit in 2 weeks. 12,000 attendees. Press from 19 countries. We want you to speak. 20 minutes. Unscripted. Tell your story. $1.2 million. Wired up front. NDA included. Let me know. R. Jason stared at the screen. Tom walked in mid-coffee, shirt half-buttoned, holding a protein shake like it was a grenade. You look like you just saw a ghost, Tom said. I might have, Jason replied. Viridian Rise wants me to speak. Tom stopped. Blinked once. Jason nodded. Tom tossed the protein shake to the side table and sat across from him. Do you know what Viridian's really doing? Jason hesitated. They say they're building AI that can simulate human empathy. Tom scoffed. They're building machines that tell people what they want to hear while stealing what they didn't know they were giving. Every privacy watchdog I know is sounding the alarm. Jason tilted his head. So why ask me? Because you're a redemption story, Tom said. You make their Frankenstein look like it has a soul. Jason frowned. I could tell the truth on stage. Use it. Flip it on them. Tom leaned in. You don't walk into a burning house because you think you can redecorate. You walk in if you're ready to burn with it. Later that day, Jason went alone. He told no one. Took an Uber to a glass skyscraper in downtown LA. The receptionist didn't ask questions, just handed him a keycard. Top floor. He walked into a boardroom so sterile it could have been a morgue. And waiting for him, at the head of the table, was a man in a white turtleneck and circular glasses. Reed Vasquez, the mind behind Viridian Rise. Jason, Reed smiled. I knew you'd come. Jason didn't sit. Reed didn't flinch. You know, empathy is predictable. That's why it's profitable. Pain sells. Forgiveness seals the deal. And people trust what they think is earned. Jason folded his arms. So what do you want me to sell? My trauma. Reed smiled wider. No. I want you to sell their own reflection. You're the mirror, Jason. The broken mirror that tells them they're whole. Jason's jaw tightened. And what happens when I break again? Reed's answer was ice cold. Then we cast the next one. That night, Jason stood at Tom's doorway. Didn't knock. Tom opened it anyway. reading his expression like a script. You turned it down? Jason nodded. It wasn't an offer. It was bait. Tom exhaled, relief washing over him like rain. Good. Jason leaned against the doorframe. You ever feel like you're being remade every day, but the world still wants the broken version? Tom smiled, tired but proud. Yeah, but the trick is not letting them decide who gets to walk out of the fire. The next morning, Jason posted one thing to his new account. No blue check, no hashtags, just truth. If the system wants your pain to sell comfort, don't give it the satisfaction. You're not a campaign. You're a human being. I was almost bought. Not anymore. The post exploded. Not because it was loud, but because it was real. The invitation came in an envelope, not an email. A thick, cream-colored one. Handwritten calligraphy across the front. Jason Carter. No return address. No sender. Just a studio logo embossed in gold. He didn't need to open it to know what it was. Lot 17. Paramount. The place where everything changed. Where his stunt double nearly died. Where the director screamed at him in front of the crew. Where the paparazzi first caught him crying behind a prop car. He didn't even finish the scene that day. Just walked off the lot and never came back. But now they were inviting him back. The studio was rebooting the franchise that made him famous. Same name. New lead. Same backlit. And they wanted Jason to do a legacy walk-on. One scene. Silent. A symbolic nod. Paid in full. No press. Tom said no the moment he heard. They're baiting your ghost, Tom said. You don't owe them resurrection. But Jason wasn't so sure. I'm not going for them, he said. Then who are you going for? Jason didn't answer. Because deep down he didn't know. He arrived early. Too early. Security barely recognized him. He was thinner now. Beard fuller. Eyes more focused. When he stepped onto the lot, he half expected to be tackled by his own panic. But the lot was quiet. Smaller than he remembered. Tom does that. Shrinks your monsters. They were already setting up the scene. A funeral in the rain. Of course it was a funeral. Hollywood was never subtle. Jason's cue was simple. Walk past the gravestone of his old character, pause, and tip a hat. No lines. Just silence. A director he'd never met approached him with a nervous smile. We're honored, Jason. You're a legend. Jason stared at the gravestone prop. They'd carved his old character's name into it. Logan Black. 1984 to 2020. Yeah, Jason muttered. He's dead, all right. The scene rolled. Fake rain. Fog machines. A funeral crowd of extras in black. Jason stepped forward on cue. Walked through the graveyard set. Stopped at the headstone. The camera hovered. Jason looked down at the fake name of a man the world had loved and he had quietly despised. Not because of the fame, but because of what he'd sacrificed to create him. In that moment, Jason didn't tip the hat. He reached down, touched the name, and whispered, off script, I forgive you. The director called cut, but the silence afterward lingered. Even the extras felt it. It wasn't acting. It was an exorcism. Tom called later that night. I saw the footage, he said. I know, Jason replied. It wasn't in the script. Tom chuckled. Sometimes the best scenes aren't. There was a pause. Did it help? Tom asked. Jason looked out the window of his apartment. The city lights flickered like thoughts in motion. Yeah, he said. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm pretending. The studio ended up cutting the scene, but a leaked clip made its way online. No one knew how. It wasn't labeled, captioned, or branded. Just 15 seconds. Jason at a gravestone, whispering words the mic barely caught. But the internet heard it anyway. I forgive you. It went viral for a reason no algorithm could fully explain. Because it wasn't just about him. It was about every person watching who needed to forgive the version of themselves they buried long ago. Jason didn't expect the call. He thought the funeral scene would be the end of it. His final ghost exhaled. But Hollywood had other plans. A week after the clip went viral, his agent, who hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, called breathless. They want you back. Jason stood barefoot in his kitchen, staring at the blinking coffee machine. Who's they? Everyone. Warner Brothers wanted a franchise resurrection. Netflix wanted a limited series. A director from Sundance offered him a role written for him. But it was Paramount that made the real move. Lead role. Blank check. 5-picture deal, his agent said. and they want you to pick the director. Jason laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of what it meant. They didn't care who he was now. They just missed who he used to be. Tom Cruise flew in the same night. No warning. No press. Just knocked on Jason's door like a brother does. They sat on the balcony as dusk folded into the Los Angeles skyline. Tom didn't speak for 5 minutes. Jason appreciated that. Finally, Tom asked, "You gonna take it?" Jason lit a cigarette. Something he hadn't done in months. "I don't know." Tom leaned forward. "You want my truth or my silence?" Jason didn't flinch. "Truth." Tom nodded slowly. "If you take that role, it's not a comeback. It's a contract with their idea of who you should be, not who you are." Jason stared out past the hills. "You think I'll lose myself again? I think you'll lose the version of you that finally started breathing." The silence that followed was heavier than the offer itself. But then came the second call. Not from a studio. From someone Jason hadn't spoken to in a decade. Caleb, his old stunt coordinator. The man who once dragged him out of a burning set when the rig failed and no one else noticed. The man who lost half a lung to that fire and never blamed him. Now he was in a hospital bed in San Bernardino. Stage 4. Terminal. Jason drove out the same night. No security. No plan. Just a bouquet of gas station flowers and a memory stitched to guilt. Caleb looked older. Thinner. But his voice was the same. Still brooding like a Bond villain. He joked when Jason entered the room. Jason laughed, but his eyes said otherwise. "You look like hell," he said. "And you look like a man who just got offered $20 million to sell his soul again," Caleb replied. Jason blinked. "News travels," Caleb added with a smirk. Jason sat by the bed, suddenly feeling small. "I came to say thank you," he said. "For saving me." Caleb shook his head. "I didn't save you. I bought you time. You're the one who wasted it." Jason didn't defend himself. Because it was true. Then Caleb reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "A script. Take this," he said. "It's mine." Jason frowned. "I thought you hated writing." "I do," Caleb said. "But before the cancer spread, I started typing out my story. Our story." Jason opened the first page. Title, "The Fall and Flight of Fireproof Men." "I want you to make this," Caleb said. "Not for the money. Not for them. For us. For everyone who ever burned quietly in someone else's spotlight." Jason didn't speak. Didn't move. He just nodded. Once. That night, Tom called again. "You taking Paramount's deal?" Jason stared at the script in his lap. "No," he said. "I'm making something real instead." Tom exhaled through the phone. "Then I'll fund it." Jason blinked. "What?" Tom didn't repeat himself. Because some offers don't need to be said twice. Tom Cruise hadn't written a check like that in years. Not because he couldn't, but because most stories didn't deserve it. This one did. The title alone sent shivers down his spine. The Fall and Flight of Fireproof Men. A film about the unseen scars behind the stunt reels. About the broken backs, the missed credits, the men who burned so that stars could shine. Jason didn't want to direct it. He didn't even want to act in it. He wanted to build it. From the ground up. Real stunt teams. Real locations. And real emotion. But Hollywood? Hollywood wanted nothing to do with it. Every studio passed. Not because it was bad, but because it was true. And truth made them sweat. One executive even said it aloud. "If you make this, you'll expose how we've treated those guys for decades." Jason didn't flinch. That's the point. Tom called in every favor he had. Old producers. Indie distributors. Even a retired gaffer with a warehouse of vintage gear. And still, doors slammed. So he did what Tom Cruise always does when the world says no. He kicked it down. Production began in the desert outside Victorville. A skeleton crew. Cameras borrowed. Gear rented. Wardrobes stitched by hand. No fancy trailers. Just folding chairs, water coolers, and a whiteboard with one phrase scribbled in red. Make them feel it. Jason worked like a man on fire. Woke at 5. Slept at 2. He carried sandbags, directed camera shots, and ran lines with first-time actors. Tom showed up twice a week, unbilled, unpaid. He didn't need credit. He just needed this to exist. And Caleb? He died 3 days into filming. But not before watching the first scene. Jason had rewritten it overnight. A stuntman lighting himself on fire. only to turn and smile at the child watching behind the glass. Tell him I saw it, Caleb whispered to Tom. I saw the truth. And then he was gone. Hollywood ignored the film, but the world didn't. A bootleg clip went viral. A stunt double's monologue to a young actor. You want fame? We're the scars of the man who made your landing safe. Millions watched and wept. Then came the invitations. Cannes, Sundance, Venice. But Jason declined them all. I didn't make this for clapping, he told Tom. I made it for remembering. One night, Tom pulled Jason aside. You realize what you've done, right? Jason shook his head. You didn't just tell their story, Tom said. You rewrote what it means to matter. Jason didn't respond. He just looked up at the stars and whispered, Caleb would have liked that. It started with a glitch. A midnight upload. Jason had meant to send the final cut to a private Vimeo folder, just for their small team. But somewhere between exhaustion and grief, he hit public and went to bed. By 7 a.m., it had 14,000 views. By 9 o'clock, it had 200,000. By lunch, it was trending in 11 countries. No trailer, no marketing budget, just raw truth in widescreen. The internet didn't just react. It exploded. Comments flooded in from stunt workers, warehouse runners, background extras, people whose names never appeared in credits, but whose work held up the entire industry. That's my story. That scene, that was me. That was real. We exist. Tom watched it unfold in silence. He was supposed to be in Europe that week, another studio gala, another red carpet. He canceled it all, because something was happening here that couldn't be missed. Jason sat beside him, motionless, eyes red, jaw clenched. It wasn't supposed to go live, he mumbled. Tom didn't look away from the screen. It was. Then came the calls. The same Hollywood execs who had ghosted them months ago. They were calling now. Offers. Distribution deals. Licensing rights. You've tapped into something big, one said. Tom didn't even blink. We didn't tap into it, he replied. We lit it. Within 48 hours, The Fall and Flight of Fireproof Men had 20 million views. 3 major directors publicly endorsed it. One studio tried to sue, but the internet tore them apart. Because for the first time, truth had momentum. Caleb's story became legend. His name, once buried beneath NDAs and accident waivers, was now etched in millions of hearts. Jason released a short tribute. Black screen. 1 line of text. He burned for you. You just didn't know his name. Until now. And then, the moment that changed everything. The Oscars called. For the first time in Academy history, they wanted to honor a film with no studio, no campaign, no million-dollar lobbyists. Just fire. And faith. Tom turned them down. Politely. We don't need your trophy, he said. We already won. But then Jason stepped forward. If they're going to give us one shot, he said, I want to say something. So they went. The lights at the Dolby Theater were blinding. Jason's heart pounded against his ribs as he stepped onto the stage. Not for glory, not for recognition, not even for Caleb, but for every invisible name that never made it into a headline. He didn't wear a tux. He wore Caleb's old leather jacket, the one scorched at the collar from their last shoot together. He walked past Tom, who stood in the wings, hands behind his back, expression unreadable, but eyes locked on Jason like a signal flare. The crowd stood, not because they were told, because they knew. Jason reached the podium. He didn't smile, didn't thank anyone. He just began. A man died for this story. And before he died, he asked me one question. Do you think they'll remember me? I didn't answer him then, but I will now. A hush fell over the room. You could hear suits tightening, breaths being held. Hollywood remembers stars. It remembers billion-dollar box offices. But it forgets the man who leaps off the roof 19 times to get the perfect take. It forgets the woman hanging from wires while pretending to be invincible. It forgets the names you never hear before the credits roll, because we're not in the credits at all. He paused. The cameras panned over a room filled with executives, agents, producers. Many who had passed on the project dismissed Caleb as a liability and told Tom Cruise, to his face, that this kind of film had no audience. They looked nervous now, like they had finally been caught. This Oscar doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to Tom. It belongs to the men and women who go to work knowing their job might kill them, just so you can forget the world for 2 hours. We are not background. We are the foundation. The standing ovation began slowly. From the back. Not from the A-list rows. From the crews. The lighting techs. The sound operators. The stagehands who built that very stage he stood on. They rose for him like a wave. And soon, everyone else followed. Even those who had once ignored Caleb's accident entirely. Because the truth was too loud now to deny. Tom met Jason backstage. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Jason extended the Oscar. Tom pushed it back and said, simply, "Put it in the village." Jason smiled. Just a flicker. Then nodded. In the months that followed, the fall and flight of Fireproof Men became more than a film. It became policy. Studios scrambled to implement safety reform. Unions gained unprecedented leverage. A new stunt workers honor roll was added to every major film credit. And Tom, he stepped back from the spotlight and stepped into something bigger. He opened the Fireproof Foundation, a sanctuary, a training ground, a memorial for stunt workers. By stunt workers, he never gave interviews about it, never asked for cameras. But sometimes, at night, he'd walk through the halls, past the plaques, the names, the faces, and pause at the one with Caleb's name, just a first name, because everyone knew who it meant. And somewhere, beneath the surface of Hollywood's glossy machine, a shift had begun. Not a revolution, a reckoning, born from the fire of a forgotten man, who became unforgettable.